Well, Dan, great to be here and chat with you today. I'm Jay Brister. I'm the managing director of Blue Sky Nuclear. That's my own firm. And a little bit about me. Been in nuclear space almost 4.5 decades now, and roles in operations, engineering, construction, technology development, technology deployment, and global experience there as well. So about 2.5 million miles under my belt, with work around the world, and that's a little bit about me to get us started.
Yeah, a lot of air miles then. Yeah, you're well traveled by the sounds of it. I guess,
Yes.
I think we first met back in 2016, maybe 2017 at one of these NIA events in London. And I know then it was a focus on, I guess, the more traditional nuclear sector, if you want to
Right.
call it that. I guess lots has happened since then and before. Perhaps could you give us an insight into some of the larger or more notable projects that you've been involved with during your career?
Actually started my career with the construction of the largest reactor currently in the United States, Grand Gulf Nuclear Station. So I had the opportunity in the very early 1980s to actually work on construction of a nuclear plant and go through startup operations as a licensed operator there. And so really hands-on with all of that. So a tremendous opportunity just to start my career. And then near the turn of the century, there was a shift in the way electricity was structured in the United States. Certain portions of the country went into deregulated or open market kind of status. That created a very unique opportunity. And I was with Entergy at the time, and there was a handful of us that started a company underneath Entergy's umbrella, and we actually took on the task of acquiring additional nuclear plants for Entergy. So had a very kind of once in a lifetime opportunity. I did due diligence on about 25 different nuclear power plants across the country. We wound up buying 6, and created a business line for Entergy when I started with the company in the late 90s. The stock price was $18 a share. Well, after we bought our 6th plant, it had gone up to $125 a share.
Wow,
So
okay.
just nuclear can be very, very, very profitable for a company. And then 20 years after that, find myself in Abu Dhabi. So I was there in the very early stages of that program. When I got there were 4 people in the client organization who did all the front end development. I did a lot of the commercial early work there. So contract negotiations, and then early programmatic setup types of things for Emirates Nuclear back then. And then after that, I've had the opportunity to be the chief business development officer for both a small modular reactor and a fusion technology. So it's been a lot of fun.
So I guess, from what I see, the industry changes every year. There's new developments and new technologies that are being pushed. What are the milestone changes that you might have seen in the last 10 years, for example, that's gotten up to this point?
I would say on the operational side, it's been almost an old U.S. Television commercial from Dunkin' Donuts.
Okay.
The guy has to get up every morning, time to make the donuts, right? So it's been kind of a time to make the donuts kind of thing for the operational side of things. I mean, the 80s and 90s were all focused on operational excellence. Capacity factors went from the 60th percentile up to the upper 90s, right? And now then we've kind of gotten to these just performance levels that are stellar, but the goal is to keep them there, and that's what they're doing, right? So that whole infrastructure has kind of been there, so that piece has been interesting. But from say 2013 or 14 to now, the biggest shift is just in the technology development side. It's just kind of over that time frame with these things called SMRs have started showing up, and it's taken 10 years to get to the point where we've finally got a real project in Canada that's going forward, with a technology, with an owner, with contracts. So it's a long journey. So a lot of development on that side over the years, and then just in the last 5 years, the stuff called fusion is beginning to kind of poke its head up over the edge of the table there, and just absolutely phenomenal amounts of private equity going into this sector just in the last 3 years. Close to $6 billion of private investment has just gone into, I think there are almost 50 private companies now. About half of those are in the United States. The majority of that funding has gone into just a handful of those startups in the country. So it's another, emerging market. Governments are beginning to, we're actually developing fusion regulations in the UK and the US, right? So it's gotten to the point that it's real enough for the regulators to say, and the owners of these developers saying, I need you to help me de-risk the deployment. I need regulation. So those kinds of things are going on. And then I think the other big thing that's interesting is just living through the effects of what happened at Fukushima, right? So just a little over 10 years ago, March the 11th, 2011, it was a very defining kind of day, right? So the industry's had to live through a lot of change going on, but and we find ourselves today with the advancement of AI and data centers. And yesterday, for example, Amazon is putting out an RFP for folks who are going to help give them 1 to 4 megawatts of nuclear capacity to power data centers, right? So who'd ever thought that would have happened, right? So that's the dynamic that we're going through right now.
It's a really interesting time, definitely, and I think every year that I've been in it, and certainly I'm sure you'll agree that there's a new push for different skills that are needed to push that even further than it is, whether that is in fusion or fission. What, from your seat and what you're seeing at the moment, what are the main skills that are in demand across potentially both sides of the fence, in fusion and in fission?
This whole sector, it's been kind of just stagnant, just because it's really been focused on operations. The new builds have not gone as well as we will have liked. So there's some kind of hesitancy on the customer side to lean forward into this. But as I just mentioned, we have a whole set of new customers who are starting to show up. So you've got Amazon with an RFP. You've also got Amazon investing in X Energy. You've got Microsoft restarting, 3 Mile Island. So all of a sudden, nuclear is much more in vogue than it has been for decades. The challenge is going to be in delivery, but with a new set of customers who, for example, the money side of things. I think third quarter of this year, Amazon, Google, Alphabet, and Meta. Their CapEx spend in third quarter was $53 billion, right? Wow. So if I got to go spend a few billion to build some nuclear, it's a relative scale thing, right? So finding the folks with the right money and with the right resources, it's going to change the landscape. So when we look at what's going to be required, I think where we sit today, it's engineering, it's designers on the fusion side of things, because folks are getting close to getting some of these SMR designs and these advanced reactor designs completed. We're seeing companies like Kairos actually beginning to build, a demonstration, getting a license to go build some things in Tennessee. So that movement, I think, will continue, and especially with this continued interest, that will begin to move forward. On the fusion side of things, the demand for physicists, demand for engineers, those are going to be there. Because the fusion sector is more so it's not necessarily R&D, but it's moving from science into building physical demonstration machines. But the real next step there is building a fusion power plant. So it's engineers, designers on the fission side. It's engineers, physicists, and folks in that realm on the fusion side. And then later in this decade, it's going to be all about designing power plants.
Yeah,
all of them, right? So so it's getting all of that going, because if that curve picks up, really, if the fusion companies follow through with their tech, their delivery timelines are essentially the same as advanced nuclear. So later this decade, early into the next decade. So it's this really kind of dynamic, shift in the whole sector. And if this fusion stuff works as well, it can be, almost, who knows where that's going to go. It could almost be almost like a horse and buggy and automobile kind of transition in how we produce energy around the world.
Oh, exactly. I think that leads on to what I want to ask next, which was there's that age-old adage of fusion is always 30 years away, but
Yeah.
I think there's been some massive milestones in the last 2 years in terms of new technologies being proven, but also record temperatures being hit on some of these test reactors as well. Where do you think this could lead to? Perhaps in 5, 10 years down the line? Oh, is it always going to be 30 years? Are we pushing closer to that demonstrator plant?
No, that's a great question. So, why talk about fusion today? I think there's really three things that differentiate fusion today as opposed to the 70 years we've been doing research in the sector. I think first and foremost is the science. So like you said, we've achieved a scientific net gain. So we've proved that we can get more energy out, and that energy out is actually doubled and it's still continuing to increase with the experiments that are ongoing at Lawrence Livermore out in California. Secondly, is what I'll call enabling technologies. We're able to additive manufacturing, advanced manufacturing. We can build things we couldn't build just a couple of years ago. High-speed computing, the development of this HTS tape, high-temperature superconducting tape that allows us. I had the opportunity this year to go to the south of France to the ITER project. It is massive. It is huge. And the big magnets that are going into the tokamak there, they're like from here to the end of my driveway, right? They're these just massive meters long. When you go to a company like Commonwealth Fusion System, who's building a small tokamak in Massachusetts, that big ITER magnet, I think, was 13 Tesla. The Commonwealth Fusion System magnet will fit in my office, and it's 20 Tesla, right? So just those kind of advancements. And then, as I mentioned earlier, just the amount of investment that's gone into these companies. So it's transitioning from, a white lab coat doing, peer-reviewed research papers to real engineering and engineering projects. So where we sit, there's 3 or 4 companies that over the next, from 25 to 27, they're going to push the button and we're going to see what happens, right? So it's that real, and it's now. And then when that happens, I think if 1 or 2 or 3 of these companies gets it right, that's just going to promulgate another tremendous wave of investment, because at that point, some of these companies will probably be, in some position to, take themselves public. Investments will continue to follow as well. And then it's a market that Bloomberg, I think in 2022 or 23, it's a headline you'll still read. It's a $40 trillion opportunity, right? It's a massive, massive market.
Oh, 100%. It's the space race all over again, but we're not trying to get to the stars. We're trying to make them here now. That's the thing. It's a really interesting one. So hey, someone's going to be there first. You're going to see who that's going to be. And I think going back to the fission side with SMRs and advanced nuclear tech as well. Obviously, there's been lots of news about data center businesses pushing lots of investment into that. How quickly is that? I guess the eyes that are coming from these large, technology businesses and pushing the money through. How quickly is that going to translate into a viable technology on the ground that's generating power? That can only be a positive thing.
It will happen. I think the world will be watching what happens in Canada with that particular project. The real proof in the pudding is when someone else puts a shovel in the ground. Right? So it's still an unknown. So the projected construction times on these are much shorter than the larger scale nuclear power plants. So in a 5-year window, if you can do this, we'll see. With hopes to get that down to like a 3-year window. But we're just going to have to struggle through this kind of first of a kind exploration, with multiple technologies, and see who gets it right and who doesn't get it right. And I think those that get it right, it's one of those things where it'll begin to replicate itself and just begin to move forward. So it's going to be dependent too upon geographies, upon ability to operate within the regulatory regimes and those kinds of things. So whether it's Canada, the U.S., UK, which I think are probably the 3 leading markets for this, it will be interesting to see how that unfolds. And then with Europe's kind of renewed interest in this, given kind of the lay of the land in that space as well, a lot of movement there. So just a lot of forward momentum. The big thing is somebody pulling out a pen and signing a contract to get it going.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's only positive for the industry to get new eyes and new engineers into the sector as well. I think traditionally the nuclear sector has taken a long time to get anything potentially moving forward. So an engineer might start their career and think, what I'm doing now, I'm not really going to see the results of that for X amount of years down the future. But I think with these new technologies, that's starting to speed up as it stands. Do you think, that's going to be an attractive thing for new engineers coming into the market? There's going to be more options and more career paths there that they can realize their potential quicker than potentially what it was 20 years ago?
Go back 40 years ago plus when I started, right?
Okay.
So it was, I joined in 3 Mile Island. It happened just a year or so before. But the market itself was very, very, very much alive. I mean, thousands and thousands of folks working in the industry, working on building new power plants. So it's one of those things that as you watch the order books develop, that's kind of your leading indicator for how stable or how unstable the needs are going to be for this sector. So someone coming out of school or wanting to transition careers into something that's going to give some unique opportunities. We're just, I think, on the cusp of that. So again, exciting times. And again, the other thing though that I like to stress with people, especially about this sector too, is you can definitely, if you want to find a home and you stay there for 35 years, you can do that. So a lot of the kids that started with me way back when stayed at one nuclear power plant for 35 years and then they retired, as opposed to myself, who's had the opportunity to live in Vancouver, to live in London, to live in Abu Dhabi, fly 2.5 million miles and work, in a couple of dozen different countries around the world. It's just an amazing sector to get involved in because the opportunities really are. And it's, if you want to go after it, you really can.
I think, for someone starting their career now and choosing nuclear as a sector, you've kind of got limitless opportunity in the direction you may want to take that career path. So yeah, it's only a positive thing for the sector, I think. I think if you're looking back at that career, if you could speak to a younger Jay who's just starting on that adventure, what advice would you give yourself now, having experienced all that you've experienced?
When I started, I had no idea where this journey was going to take me, right? So jump in with both feet and learn all you can, and just be there for your coworkers, be there for your company, and just deliver as you need to. And in this particular sector, I think that's noticed and that's rewarded, and it creates a unique set of opportunities for you to kind of explore your own path. That's the way you can kind of control your own destiny, I guess. In this sector is I think having that kind of outlook, it's a lot of fun.
Well, thank you for taking the time out to sit down and have that conversation with us today. I think anyone that's looking at a career in nuclear can see the opportunities that you've had and can see some insight into where that can take you. So thanks for sharing your thoughts.